Hi, this is Paul Reimers from paulreimers.com. This post is all about questions. What the nature of questions are, what's the potential of them, and how we can use them to expand our life and expand our consciousness. So a lot of times we tend to take questions for granted. We will think that they're just a small little grouping of words with a question mark at the end that is aimed at finding the one right answer. And that's true a lot of the times. There's questions called close-ended questions, which either has a short answer or a yes or a no. But even more powerful is what's called open-ended questions. And that's when you ask yourself a question and you just allow there to be space for multiple answers to come up. So an example would be, what's great about this situation? Or what's great about this situation that I'm not getting? Or what are some ways I can work with this issue? Those allow multiple answers to keep coming up from your consciousness. And the thing that's really important to keep in mind with questions is that there's two other qualities of questions. That's if they're disempowering or empowering. And a lot of times we will ask ourselves questions, especially when they're done habitually, and they will be with limitation in them. Some sort of false premise or limited belief, something like that. And what happens is we can only get limitation and problems on the other end of a type of question like that. And it's funny because questions essentially are a kind of program. And when I was reading about early programming, there's a saying called garbage in, garbage out, which means that if you have problems written into a program, like the early programmers were saying if there's problems and distortions in the program, then the output necessarily has to be distorted and have problems with it. Well, that's the exact same thing with questions. Whenever we put limitation and false premises and we try to make ourselves small and limited, we're infinite. We can be, do, or have anything. And when we put false limitation into our questions, we have to get false limitations and things like that coming out the other end of it. So one of the easiest ways to know if you're asking an empowering versus a disempowering question is to work with your energy. And how you do that is really simple. You just ask yourself a question, you feel your energy, ask yourself a question, and then feel what kind of energetic shift you had afterwards. So here's an example. You might say the disempowering question of, why does this always happen to me? And if you feel your energy beforehand, you ask that consciously. I don't know how many people have ever asked that question consciously, honestly. But you ask yourself that question consciously, just get through it, and feel what happens with your energy, how much smaller, more contracted it is. Well, if you asked a more empowering question like, well, what are some things I could do about this situation? How could I shift this situation? You'll feel that your energy shifts and gets bigger. And what's cool about this is you can actually make it more empowering and say, well, what can I do to shift this situation that it can be joyful and fun to work with the process and can positively benefit everyone involved? And if you feel the energy with that, it's a bigger energy still. So if you want to keep being conscious of your energy and asking questions, you will feel the bigger and bigger and bigger energy as the questions get more empowering. What's really neat about that is not only are you going to have better quality answers, but you're going to have a bigger and fuller energy to act on those answers. So one real quick thing about the false premises and limiting beliefs and things like that, I'll cover that, I'll dig into that in several more posts in the future. But how I like to think of beliefs is it's like frames. And a limiting belief is like a little tiny frame. And we could have this gigantic, amazing, beautiful mural that's like our life and this this artistic masterpiece. And if we look at it through this tiny little frame, no matter where we put it, no matter what area we focus on, it can be no more than like a little smear of color, and that's what we do a lot of times in our life is we take this amazing capacity and this infinite possibility and make it this big. And those small perceptions and those small results become our life. So that's something we'll get into in a future post. But for right now, I would urge you to ask questions consciously and really feel the process of what's happening in your body, what's happening with your energy when you do those things. Okay, so two really quick applications I want to share. The first one is called affirmations. And you might be familiar with affirmations. That's basically when you have a phrase that has a quality that you want to take on in your life. Like I'm successful, I'm successful, I'm successful, and you just keep repeating that. Well, the problem with that is a lot of times people are saying that, they're desiring a quality, but they're also feeling the lack of that quality at the same time. So it's like you have what you desire to be your quality, and then you have how you feel about that at the same time, which is its opposite, and that's polarity. So with a lot of times with affirmations, we're just driving polarity deeper into our consciousness. Whereas if you use affirmations, that was created by Noah St. John, and I'll put his link in my blog post so you can find out more about him. But he created the idea of affirmations, and that's basically taking affirmations and phrasing it like a question. So instead of saying I'm successful, I'm so successful, it's just a simple, why am I successful? How am I successful? And just allowing that question to be there and allowing the space around that question, and all of these answers and resources will come up to show you that you are already successful in a lot of areas. And that is so much more powerful than trying to drive a pointed concept into your mind and hope it'll stick. So I encourage you to play around with that. The second application I want to share with you is called meta questions. Meta questions are questions about questions, and they're also questions that generate questions. And a real simple application for that is you can ask yourself the question, what questions could I ask myself when I first wake up in the morning that would leave me just totally excited about the day and all the possibilities that I have, laying ahead of me? Questions like that, you can ask it a number of different ways, but you will generate really powerful questions that you can keep using on a daily basis, and then ask more questions to generate more different types of questions depending on what you need. You could ask another question like, what questions can I ask myself as I'm drifting off to sleep that will just leave me with a sense of just wonder and joy and gratitude for the day I just lived? All of these types of questions you can just ask, and that will generate more questions that you can ask yourself to shift more energy. And one last little piece I wanted to share was the importance of space. We talked earlier that all of the power is in open-ended questions rather than closed-ended questions. But what's important to know is that the more open the open-ended questions, the more potential and the more power there is in it. So I would encourage you to allow so much space around the question, because a lot of times we might have the good intentions of, we're going to ask an open-ended question, and the first good answer that comes, we say, great, and grab it, and then that's our conclusion, and that's our truth, and that's all that can come from that question. Whereas instead, if we can have sort of like that openness, and sort of like almost like a childlike sense of curiosity of like, as content comes up and answers keep coming to the question and evidence shows up in our life, we can say, yes, what else is possible? What else could show up? What are the other possibilities in this? Then that creates a momentum that allows more and more to show up. And one really great passage that illustrates this is from the Tao Te Ching. There's the chapter 11 says that you can mold clay into a bowl, but the use of the bowl is from the space within it. You can form a house with walls and doors, but the use of the house is the negative space within it. So benefit comes from being, but use comes from non-being. So it's this space around things that really is most of what we use things for. So I would encourage you to appreciate the space you can create around a question in that same way. You come up with a powerful question, that will give you benefit, but you allow the space around that question. That's where the real use of that question will come in. So anyway, I encourage you to play around with that concept as well as the other ones that I just shared as well. So anyway, I would love to hear whatever comments and questions you have about this video and this blog post. If you're on YouTube, you can comment in the comment section. If you're on my blog, you can comment on the comment section there. And if you're on YouTube, I would encourage you to visit my blog. There's a link for it in the description section. And if you feel like you got something out of this video, I'd love if you could share it through Facebook, Twitter, through email even, social bookmarking sites, anything like that. So anyway, once again, this is Paul Reimers from paulreimers.com. Thanks so much for taking the time to look at this, and I'll talk to you soon.